Welcome. My name is Richard Fisher. I'm the publisher of Inside GNSS, Inside Unmanned Systems, and Inside Autonomous Vehicle. We are Autonomous Media, and we are here at the Get Inside the Future podcast. And with me, I'd like to welcome Santh Sathya, founder and CEO of Luftcar. And we're delighted to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
Yeah. So I've seen some interesting news about Luftcar. Can you tell me about Luftcar specifically? And tell us a little bit about Luftcar, where you've come from and where you're going and how you're going to help the future of advanced air mobility.
Fantastic. Gladly do that. And thanks for having me here.
It's our pleasure.
Luft is the only thing German about Luftcar. Otherwise, it is a completely American company. We are based out of Orlando, Florida, and our team is made of American engineers from U.S. Air Force, Lockheed Martin, GE, Ford, all the great American companies. What we are trying to do is develop a hydrogen-powered air and road vehicle, which also happens to be an eVTOL. I call this Luft.
What happens to be a what?
Which also happens to be an eVTOL. An
Okay.
eVTOL is
eVTOL.
electric vertical takeoff
Yep.
and landing, right? But our business proposition is in really solving today's problems by having a combined air and road capability for the vehicle. What this vehicle does is, upon landing, the road vehicle will detach from the air vehicle, and you can drive the road vehicle to destinations. So it's a true flying car.
Very cool. It's truly a flying car. You know, it's funny, Santh, right?
Yes.
Am I pronouncing your name
You're right.
correctly? First of all, Santh, question. What's in the water in Orlando? Orlando is becoming quite the tech hub. One of the reasons we wanted to interview you was because of your Florida, location base. We've got more than a couple of customers in the Florida area, Orlando, and it seems to be we want to do our part to help kind of drive Orlando, greater Orlando area, and Florida as well as kind of a destination technology center. What's your perspective on that?
Yeah,
As a guy who's doing it.
Yeah, it's very interesting that you asked this question, because when I did my earlier startup 4 or 5 years ago, Orlando was not known to be one of the most startup-friendly cities, and it was really not ranked that high. But I think the beating that it got with this bad reputation over the years had struck a nerve somewhere. And suddenly, the last couple of years, people have seemed to woken up, and there's a spurt of activities everywhere. And I just came back from Miami last week, and the talk in Miami is that many of those entrepreneurs want to move to Orlando, because Orlando is now bustling with creativity and innovation, which is really a great thing for us, and we're looking for better years to come.
Outstanding. That's great. And increasingly with, the SunTrax, center and the tech hub with Florida Polytechnic and the universities here in Orlando, that kind of Orlando Lakewood corridor may become a thing. Just as we saw, the corridors in Boston or on the peninsula and out, south of San Francisco. So that's what I'm predicting anyway. That's why I'm a resident of Florida.
Yes. Absolutely. Autonomy has taken a great leaps and strides in the Orlando region particularly. And airports, the transportation industry in general, the energy industry, they're all coming together. And I think Orlando is going to become a hub for autonomy very soon if it already is not.
That's great. So I'd like to kind of start at the end, first. Let's start with the end in mind. Let's talk about the various user communities that you see as creating the most uptake for Luftcar.
Sure.
Is it more kind of last mile delivery, or are you envisioning emergency services or healthcare? Where do you think the user community of most immediate opportunity exists for Luftcar, Santh?
No, great question. This is where our Florida experience comes in, because when we started the Luftcar concept out in the market and tested it, one of the first groups to show interest was Florida EMS. They received us well in their expo, and their EMS director was fully in support of our concept. They thought our vehicles would be a much more economical replacement for the helicopters that they buy, because our vehicles would provide a single platform to rescue victims, rescue casualties from any roadside accident, or provide disaster relief for a larger group of people. Because we take services to the people, we take doctors to the people rather than taking them back into the hospital. We can take them back into the hospital as well, but we provide enough cargo space so that people don't have to be moved from one vehicle to another, put them in the road vehicle, and then fly the road vehicle back into the hospital.
So in that case, for first responders,
yes,
and emergency services, you are basically integrating the helicopter and an ambulance, air ambulance and ground vehicle ambulance, emergency services, first responders.
Yes, and mobile hospitals, because we can take
and mobile hospital, all in one self-contained vehicle.
Correct.
Do our listeners a favor, because that's a pretty advanced concept, isn't it? This is a little Tom Swift, a little Star Trek. Give us this kind of narrative. Walk us through what is a likely use case. We're driving down 95, we're on our way to Orlando, there's a serious multi-car accident. Tell us how Luftcar supports the first responders and emergency service community in dealing with that, what can be a very tragic situation, what can be, in fact, minutes in terms of response time, minutes saves lives, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So tell us about that. Create a narrative for us to create kind of a visual use case for our listeners, if you would.
So you're on I-95 and there's an accident out there, and the nearest hospital is probably, let's say, 20 miles away, hypothetically speaking. And then an ambulance facility is 10 miles away. And the ambulance gets there by how? By driving through the road traffic.
Yep.
And there's already a traffic congestion because of the accident. There's already a backup. Now the ambulance has to meander its way right to the spot. But it takes time, right? But the moment you are able to know where the accident is, you send a lift car. The lift car goes and lands at an open spot on the highway, which is very unlikely because there's already congestion. But you probably land in a nearby exit. And the road vehicle detaches and goes to that place fairly quickly. So you're saving all the time driving up the road to get to that spot. And then once you rescue the victim, you don't have to move them from a road vehicle to a air vehicle if you need to. You can take the road vehicle where the victim is already in and drive to the air vehicle, attach, and then fly straight to the hospital. So the time savings is approximately 1/3. I mean, you can get there 3 times faster, and you can get that cheaper also compared to a helicopter if you're going to deploy one.
That's impressive. What's the response been by the EMS community?
The EMS community has been very supportive. In fact, we have a letter of interest from Advent Health in buying these vehicles once we make them. FAA regulations is something that we have to go through as part of certification. The FAA regulations...
Type certification.
Yes, and type certification for an air ambulance vehicle is different from that of a passenger vehicle. So we have accounted for that into our product development plan. And by 2025, these vehicles will be commercially available in the market.
What do you think the total addressable market is, even in North America, is for Luftcar?
For general urban air mobility vehicles, according to JP Morgan, the market will be close to $1 trillion by 2035. I would expect it to be like $700 billion by 2030. I'm looking at 10 years. But for Luftcar alone, our calculations show that we have a $43 billion revenue opportunity by 2030. Because we're going to be in 3 different industry segments. One is healthcare and cargo. I'm bundling them together. The second would be defense. Will be a great defense vehicle for Air Force, Navy. And thirdly, it will be personal transportation where these vehicles could be operated by airline companies, connecting big cities with small cities,
Sure.
big cities with rural communities. And with Florida, with Luftcars being there, we can connect between Tampa, Jacksonville, Orlando, Key West, and all the way up to Tallahassee with quick travel. And then once you land there, you have the road vehicle to drive around as well.
Yeah, and with the demographic shifts in population, demographics and not just South Florida, but Florida generally from the rest of North America has been pretty substantial. So
Right.
anything can alleviate traffic and congestion and transportation inefficiencies is a good thing. So you've decided to. You think there's a defense application that makes good sense. You and eVTOL, some of the, vertical takeoff and landing is clearly an interesting, an important kind of modality for defense applications. We're seeing that in kind of straight ahead UAS, future tactical UAS program for the United States Army is underway. 3 of the 4 vehicles are vertical takeoff and landing.
Right.
As I understand it, the complexity becomes after the ascent, and then you need to you need to travel horizontally, and vice versa. The deceleration at altitude, and then converting to that descent modality. Can you talk a little bit about your tech and how that enables kind of a safe and reliable mode of transportation? Because your first kind of targeted market is really a safety of life application. So safety is of paramount importance. Can you talk a little bit about that, Santh?
Sure. I'll talk a little bit about the powertrain, the power sources, and also the articulation, which transitions us from vertical to horizontal flight.
Great.
So when it comes to the propulsion, we will be using both hydrogen and battery hybrid for the air vehicle. Hydrogen is the one that gives us the 300 miles to 500 miles range. With batteries, you do not get enough energy density for long distance travel. So for us to get any meaningful long distance travel, whether in defense or commercial applications, hydrogen powertrain becomes essential, and we've got some great partners helping us with that.
Right.
In terms of transition from vertical to horizontal flight, we're going to use tilt motors, tilt propellers right now, very similar to what they use in V-22 Osprey.
Got it.
Which is something that many of the eVTOL companies use now. So it's going to be 6 propellers based on FAA recommendation. 6 is because of redundancy. Even if 2 of them are go bad, dysfunctional, we will be able to land with the rest 4. And also there'll be backup motors for each of the propellers. So in case there is a central power connection failure with the propellers, the backup motors will trigger in so that the vehicles can land safely in emergency landing locations. Safety is paramount for us, and I myself am a black belt in Six Sigma. So right from the start, we'll be designing for failure mode avoidance.
Great. Yeah, and so you're dealing with a proven kind of methodology for transitioning from horizontal to vertical flight, but I'm really interested in your hydrogen approach.
Yes.
Hydrogen is got very high energy density. We're familiar with a number of UAS manufacturers that are, focused on hydrogen. The range and the performance and the flight duration is just remarkable. Of course, the challenge is the infrastructure necessary to support hydrogen fuel cells.
Yes.
So how does Luftcar anticipate dealing with that challenge? What is your approach to that, Santh?
So we are not going to make the same mistake we did 10 years ago with hydrogen-powered cars, in that we built the cars but never really focused on building infrastructure.
There you
so
go.
We floundered as an industry, right? We are learned
Indeed.
our lessons. So what we are doing now, as Luftcar, is paying a lot of attention in developing the ecosystem as well. So we have come up with this concept called Luftpad, which would be hydrogen refueling vertiports. So where we are partnering with companies that make hydrogen refueling possible, and also that do on-site storage of hydrogen. And we are partnering with some oil and gas companies, some power companies, and some real estate companies, and some airports in developing these vertiports so that Luftcars can handle safely, they land safely, and they can be refueled at low cost to the pump, and then take off. We have signed 2 MOUs with airports in Germany to demonstrate this Luftpad concept.
Excellent.
We are working with 3 airports in the United States, and very soon we'll be signing MOUs with them as well, all with the purpose of demonstrating this ecosystem.
It's impressive.
Thank you, and thanks for that question. I think that's a very important topic that we all have to.
It's critical.
Yeah, it is.
It's critical. Just look at Tesla and their supercharger network.
Yeah.
Why do Tesla owners have range anxiety? Because if you've ever been, in Southern Virginia on I-95, there's a bit of a gap there between Rocky Mount, North Carolina, and the next Tesla charger outside of Roanoke. So it's obviously that infrastructure is antecedent to your vision for But the reality is that you're making an assumption about hydrogen as being the go-to energy source for eVTOL. However, how does that build out harmonize with the technical readiness level of your airframes, of the business model, of the ecosystems of partners that you're going to clearly need to both educate, invest, and implement your vision?
Yep, that's a fantastic question. That is the challenge that we are trying to overcome on a daily basis. So if you look at the individual pieces of technologies, they are all at fairly mature technology levels. Hydrogen fuel cell is at TRL 7, TRL 8, right? Then battery technologies at TRL 9. The airframes that have been done for hundreds of years. But putting them all together and doing smart engineering is what this is all about. And Luftcar by itself is between TRL 2 to TRL 3, and we are working towards developing our first concept prototype. Once we do that, we will be declaring TRL 3. I think the biggest challenge right now for us is to package hydrogen on board in the airplane, which has not been done before to a large extent. So that's where coming up with really innovative technologies like a solid state storage or improvised liquid state storage, or somewhere between liquid and solid, that gives you the enough packaging capability.
Got it.
It's needed to get you the 300 to 500 miles. And we are working with some really good partners, particularly with the Department of Defense as well on this. So, but we are pretty confident that the technologies are all fairly mature, but it's about putting them together and coming up with a Luftcar specific solution is going to be our job, and we are doing that.
Yeah. Harmonizing those various TRLs into one kind of cohesive model that's going to provide, an array of service capabilities for both public, private, and defense user communities is exciting. We are here with Santh from Luftcar, based in Orlando, Florida. Just one, give us a final kind of summary observation, Santh. I've been coming to this conference for longer than I care to admit, but when there was probably, less than 50 exhibitors, and it wasn't that long ago, as you kind of survey this community, this ecosystem of autonomous and unmanned service providers. How do you feel about how Luftcar fits in, and how Luftcar can have a meaningful impact on lots of problems these people are trying to solve?
Well, first of all, this is my first time being here, and I think I'm one of the very few advanced air mobility vehicles in terms of people carrying vehicles out here. I see a lot of cargo vehicles, I see drones, but I'm one of the very few. But what I see is many of my partners are here, the people that I've signed MOUs with. The government organizations are here. So I'm so glad that I'm here and I didn't miss it by some freak chance. So this is a very, very important event. And hopefully the next time when we do this, advanced air mobility would have progressed to the next phase. So we might have some more OEMs here like mine. But I think we are doing the right thing here in Orlando, and this event happening in Orlando is really big. I think we are competing with Miami to be one of the better cities in Florida, in my opinion.
You heard it here first, people. Dolphins, yeah, you know. Santh, it's been a pleasure. We really appreciate your time. We wish you nothing but good success and competent execution. You've got an amazing market opportunity. So Godspeed and appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Richard. Thanks for those words of support.